I was sitting there in that leather chair they'd reupholstered twice but never replaced, the one with the worn armrest I'd been gripping for 8 years, when Jonathan slid the folder across his mahogany desk with that same practiced expression, half sympathy, half condescension. The face of someone who'd rehearsed delivering bad news so many times it had become routine. I knew what was inside before I even opened it. Rejection number 11. 11 times. 11 times I'd been passed over for vice president, and I already knew who got it instead of me. Stephanie, 9 months at the firm. 9 months. The thing is, Monica, Jonathan said, leaning forward like we were confidants instead of whatever we actually were. The compensation committee felt Q3 wasn't optimal for leadership restructuring. Market volatility, you understand. But I've personally advocated for your name to be at the top of the spring consideration list. I nodded like I believed him, like I hadn't heard almost those exact words 10 times before, like I hadn't trained every single person who'd been promoted above me since 2016. Then I did something that surprised even me. I started laughing. Not polite chuckles, the kind of laugh that makes people shift uncomfortably in their seats. The kind that says something inside me has finally broken. Jonathan's face did this strange thing. His boardroom smile flickered like a Bloomberg terminal losing connection. Is something amusing? Yeah, I said, still laughing. Me. I'm the punchline for believing you 11 times. So that's how it started. That's the moment I decided to stop waiting for permission to succeed. I should probably introduce myself. I'm Monica Castellano. I was 37 when this happened, working at a prestigious wealth management firm called Sterling Ashworth Partners. We handled portfolio management for ultra-high net worth individuals and family offices. The kind of clients who measured wealth in generations, not years. 8 years I'd been there. 8 years of being the person they called at midnight when a client panicked about market corrections. 8 years of being told I was indispensable. But apparently not indispensable enough to promote. The office smelled like leather furniture and expensive cologne. 44th floor of a glass tower on Park Avenue, surrounded by hedge funds and private equity firms, all convinced their particular alpha strategy was superior. My desk was in the bullpen with the other senior associates, 3 Bloomberg terminals, a dying orchid I kept forgetting to water, a crystal clock the Harrington family had given me after I'd saved their portfolio from a catastrophic margin call, stacks of quarterly reports and risk assessments, the organized chaos of someone who actually managed the money while others took credit. Before I go deeper into this mess, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments if you've ever been in a situation where you felt completely invisible despite outperforming everyone around you. Because honestly, it helps to know I'm not alone in this. And trust me, this story goes places even I couldn't have predicted. So back to that office, that moment. I composed myself and told Jonathan I understood, that I was a team player, that I appreciated his advocacy, all the Wall Street phrases I'd learned to say without feeling. Then I walked back to my desk, past Stephanie, who was literally showing her new business cards to anyone who'd look. Vice President, Private Wealth Management. The title that should have been mine almost 4 years ago. Let me give you some context. Sterling Ashworth was founded by 2 partners who'd left Goldman Sachs in the 90s. They had this whole, we're boutique, we're different, we treat our people like family thing going on. The kind of culture that sounds prestigious in recruiting presentations and crumbles the moment you need something from management. Jonathan was a founding partner's nephew. I was employee 47, hired when they were still hungry and trying to prove themselves against the bulge bracket firms. Let me tell you about Jonathan. He arrived at Sterling Ashworth with the confidence of someone who'd never earned anything through merit. Not because he was talented, because his last name opened doors that performance never could. His first month, he called a division meeting to introduce his management philosophy. Spoke for 90 minutes about client-centric innovation and synergistic value creation. Used the phrase paradigm shift 8 times. I counted because I had nothing else to do while he wasted our trading hours. His idea of leadership was presentations, lots of presentations, slide decks about slide decks, quarterly reviews that lasted entire days, one-on-ones where he'd ask about my development goals and then spend the hour name-dropping clients he'd inherited. He had a habit of presenting investment strategies in partner meetings that I'd developed and shared with him in private. Word for word sometimes. When I pointed this out once, diplomatically, he said he was just elevating my ideas to the appropriate decision makers, that I should be grateful for the visibility. He played favorites openly. Trevor got the premium accounts because they golfed together at the club. Allison got the flexible schedule because she'd summered with his family in the Hamptons. New hires got opportunities that senior associates had been requesting for years. And he always had an explanation. When I asked for the promotion the first time, he said I needed more direct client interaction. When I got that experience, he said I needed additional certifications. When I got the CFA and the CFP, he said I needed to demonstrate leadership capabilities. When I led a team, he said the timing wasn't favorable. When the timing improved, he said the committee had other priorities. 11 times, 11 different justifications. 11 ways of saying we don't value you enough to promote you, but we value you too much to let you leave. But I believed him. Every time. Because I wanted to believe that excellence mattered, that competence counted, that eventually someone would recognize what I brought to the table. The cruelest part, he wasn't even intentionally malicious. He genuinely didn't comprehend why I was frustrated. To him, I was just a reliable resource. A machine that generated returns and managed risk. Not a person with aspirations and a career trajectory. That's what made it sting more. I wasn't even significant enough to be deliberately overlooked. I was just invisible. I'd automated 70% of their risk assessment protocols. I'd saved their largest account, the Pemberton Family Trust, when our lead portfolio manager quit mid-rebalancing and left behind positions that nobody else understood. I routinely worked 70-hour weeks. I delivered consistent alpha in every market condition. And it wasn't just that they didn't promote me. They'd explain why. Always something different. You need more institutional client experience. So I'd cultivate institutional relationships. You need to demonstrate thought leadership. So I'd publish research and speak at conferences. You need stronger quantitative skills. So I'd master derivatives and alternative investments. You need better relationship management. So I'd spend months building rapport with every stakeholder. And after I'd satisfy each requirement, they'd shift the criteria. Again and again and again. Meanwhile, they promoted people around me. Trevor, who'd lost $3 million on a single trade but played golf with Jonathan every Saturday. Allison, who couldn't construct a basic options strategy without my guidance but was childhood friends with our managing director. And now Stephanie, whose primary qualification appeared to be that she'd attended the same prep school as our CEO's daughter. I used to wonder what was deficient about me. Was I not polished enough? Not political enough? Wrong background. Wrong presentation style. I spent so much energy trying to decode the system, trying to discover what secret formula would finally make them acknowledge my value. But sitting there that day, watching Stephanie parade around with her new title, something just crystallized. There was no code to decode. The system was simply rigged, not just against me, but against anyone who actually believed performance mattered. That night, I went home and cried. Like completely broke down. The kind where you're sitting on your bathroom floor at 2 a.m. questioning if you've squandered 8 years of your life. My sister found me there. She was staying with me that week, asked what happened. I told her everything. The 11 rejections, the broken commitments, the growing realization that I'd been auditioning for people who'd already decided not to cast me. She said something that stayed with me. Monica, you've spent 8 years building someone else's legacy. Maybe it's time to build your own. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I did something I'd never had time for when I was working 70-hour weeks. I thought about what I actually wanted, about what I was actually worth, about all the clients who called me directly because they trusted my judgment more than anyone else at Sterling Ashworth, about the strategies I developed that nobody else comprehended, about the institutional knowledge locked in my head that would take years to replicate. By sunrise, I had a plan. 2 weeks later, I submitted my resignation. No theatrics, no lengthy explanation. Just a standard notice period and a transition document that was probably more comprehensive than their entire procedures manual. I wrote that document not for them, for myself, to prove that I was professional until the end, to prove that I could depart with dignity. Jonathan called me into his office 45 minutes after I sent the email. His face was ashen. His hands were trembling slightly. I'd never witnessed him lose composure before. Monica, what is this? Is this about the promotion? Because I can speak with the compensation committee. I can escalate this. I can make things happen. I looked at him. Really looked. This man who'd promised me advancement 11 times, who'd watched me train my own supervisors, who'd called me invaluable while treating me like I was expendable, who'd presented my strategies as his own in partner meetings, who'd given credit to people who golfed with him while I worked weekends. It's not about the promotion, I said. It's about respect, and I've realized I'm never going to find it here. We can discuss compensation, he said quickly. The desperation was beginning to surface. Carried interest, a signing bonus, a better title. Whatever you need, just tell me what you want. I shook my head. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested. Where are you going? Competitor. We have non-competes. Legal will get involved. You'll never work on the street again. I smiled, the kind of smile that comes from having finally achieved clarity. I'm going somewhere that values what I contribute. And don't worry about the non-compete. I had an attorney review it when I signed. It's not enforceable in New York for this type of role. Your legal team made a mistake in the drafting. Several mistakes, actually. His face went white. The same face he made when markets crashed, and he realized he didn't understand the positions. The same face he made when clients called with questions he couldn't answer. The next 2 weeks were surreal. People who'd barely acknowledged my existence suddenly wanted to have lunch, to pick my brain about portfolios I'd constructed, to extract as much knowledge as possible before I walked out the door. Trevor invited me to golf. First time in 8 years, Allison wanted to have drinks. 3 times in 1 week. Even Stephanie, the newly minted vice president, stopped by my desk to ask questions about risk models I'd built. I was cordial, but guarded. I'd already given this firm 8 years. I wasn't going to give them any more. On my last day, the team threw a small reception, champagne and awkward speeches. Jonathan said something about how much I'd contributed, how I'd always be part of the Sterling Ashworth family, how his door was always open if I wanted to return. I nodded and smiled and said nothing. At 6 p.m., I packed my orchid and my crystal clock. I took one last look at my desk, at the Bloomberg terminals I'd stared at for 8 years, at the bullpen where I'd solved 1,000 problems, at the leather chair with the worn armrest that they'd never replaced. Then I walked out without looking back. I'd saved enough money to survive 9 months without income. 9 months to figure out what came next. What came next was Pinnacle Wealth Advisory. It started small, just me, a laptop, and a home office that was really just my apartment's second bedroom with a desk crammed into the corner. The first week was terrifying. I woke up every morning at 5 out of habit, then remembered I had nowhere to go. No positions to monitor, no client calls to take, no one expecting me to generate returns. The silence was deafening. I spent the first few days just processing, thinking, trying to figure out who I was outside of Sterling Ashworth. Then I got to work. I reached out to my network, former colleagues who'd left the street, vendors and custodians I'd worked with over the years, conference contacts I'd collected but never followed up on, anyone who might need someone who actually understood how to manage wealth properly. The responses were slow initially. A lot of, let me think about it's, a lot of not right now, but maybe later's. I started to doubt myself, started to wonder if I'd made a catastrophic mistake, started to count the months until my savings depleted. Then the first client came through, a referral from a former colleague, a tech entrepreneur whose previous advisor had abandoned him after his company went public. He was overwhelmed, confused by the complexity of his new wealth. Desperate for someone who would actually explain things instead of just collecting fees, I restructured his entire portfolio in 3 weeks. Work that his previous advisor had estimated would take 6 months. He paid me more for those 3 weeks than Sterling Ashworth had paid me in 4 months. Word spread. The entrepreneur told another founder. That founder told a family office. My phone started ringing. Within 3 months, I had 6 clients. Within 7 months, I had to hire my first employee, a former colleague from Sterling Ashworth who'd reached out to say she was miserable. I offered her a position before she finished her sentence. Within 14 months, I was declining new clients because I couldn't handle the volume. I rented office space, a converted brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, exposed brick walls, large windows overlooking a garden, the kind of space I'd always wanted but never had at Sterling Ashworth. I bought new furniture, quality pieces, with comfortable chairs that actually supported you. I made that a priority because I remembered what it felt like to spend 8 years in worn leather that nobody cared enough to replace. I never wanted anyone on my team to feel that way. But let me back up, because while I was building Pinnacle, something interesting was happening at Sterling Ashworth. The first signs appeared within 2 weeks of my departure. The risk models I'd built started producing anomalies, not obvious ones, subtle discrepancies that only manifested under specific market conditions. The kind of issues that required deep understanding of how the systems interconnected. Jonathan called an emergency meeting. Apparently it lasted 5 hours. Nobody could diagnose the problem. They eventually escalated to their quant team, who discovered that some of my custom algorithms were dependent on calibration parameters I'd stored locally, parameters that had been automatically archived when I left. 4 weeks after I left, the Pemberton Family Trust called to complain about portfolio performance. The rebalancing strategy I'd designed was drifting. Nobody understood why, because nobody comprehended the custom hedging approach I'd developed. The documentation I'd created was thorough, but it assumed a level of sophistication that apparently didn't exist after I left. I found this out through a former colleague. She messaged me on LinkedIn, half amused, half horrified. "They're completely adrift," she said. "They've hired 2 consultants just to understand what you built. Neither of them can figure it out." Part of me felt guilty. Maybe I should have documented things more explicitly. Maybe I should have made myself more replaceable. But then I remembered the 11 rejections, the broken promises, the way they'd treated me like a function instead of a person. And the guilt dissipated. Jonathan reached out 5 weeks later. Could I consult just temporarily? They'd pay my hourly rate. Whatever I wanted. I quoted him 5 times my old hourly compensation. He agreed without hesitation. That's when I knew how desperate they were. I spent 2 days at Sterling Ashworth resolving the issues. 2 days of walking through halls where I'd spent 8 years. 2 days of watching people who'd been promoted above me struggle with systems I'd constructed from scratch. 2 days of realizing how much institutional knowledge I'd taken with me. The office felt different, smaller somehow, more desperate. People avoided my eyes in the corridors, like they were ashamed, or envious, or both. I resolved the main issues in 8 hours, wrote additional documentation in 4 more, collected my check, and left. Never went back. But the Pemberton Family Trust was impressed. So impressed that when their advisory agreement with Sterling Ashworth came up for renewal, they called me directly. "We're not satisfied with Sterling Ashworth." Their family office director said, "We haven't been satisfied for a while, but you were the only reason we stayed. Now that you're gone, we're evaluating other options." I didn't ask them to leave Sterling Ashworth. That would have been unethical. But I did tell them I'd be happy to discuss their needs if they decided to make a transition. They decided to make a transition. Pemberton became my largest client, $18 million in assets under management. More than I'd managed in my entire career at Sterling Ashworth under my own name. And they weren't the only ones. Within 10 months of leaving, 7 of Sterling Ashworth's clients had reached out to me, not because I solicited them, because they remembered who'd actually managed their money, because they'd noticed the decline in quality after I left, because trust follows competence, not logos. I didn't plan this. I didn't set out to take Sterling Ashworth's clients. I just focused on doing excellent work, and the clients found me, one by one, family by family, until my calendar was full and my business was thriving. Meanwhile, Sterling Ashworth was struggling. Their client satisfaction scores dropped 35% in 8 months. Portfolio performance lagged the benchmark by 200 basis points. 4 senior associates quit in 6 months. Then 3 more the following quarter. The exodus had begun. I heard about it through the grapevine. Former colleagues who'd messaged me on LinkedIn. Industry contacts who'd ask what happened at Sterling Ashworth. Custodians who'd gossip about declining AUM and delayed fee payments. The picture that emerged was grim. Without me maintaining the risk models, positions became unbalanced. Without my documentation of the legacy strategies, adjustments took 3 times as long. Without my relationships with key clients, renewals became difficult. Jonathan, I heard, was overwhelmed. He'd never understood the quantitative side of what I did. He'd assumed someone else could just step in and replicate it. He was wrong. The managing partners brought in consultants, McKinsey types, who charged more per day than I'd made in a week. They produced a 70-page report recommending exactly what I'd been advocating for years. Invest in your people. Promote based on merit. Stop treating your best performers like interchangeable parts. The report was filed and ignored. Of course, I felt a quiet satisfaction. I'll admit, not pride, exactly. More like validation. Proof that I hadn't been delusional all those years. That my contributions had actually mattered. That the 11 rejections said more about them than about me. Then something unexpected happened. Stephanie showed up at my door. Not my apartment door, my office door. The brownstone I'd rented when Pinnacle started growing. She looked nervous, different from the confident woman who'd paraded those business cards around. "Can we talk?" she asked. "About what?" "About my future," she said. "Things at Sterling Ashworth are deteriorating. Really deteriorating. They're discussing layoffs. And honestly, even if I survive the cuts, I don't want to stay." I leaned back in my chair. This woman who'd gotten the promotion I deserved, standing in my office, asking for my help, I should have felt vindicated, triumphant. Instead, I just felt exhausted, tired of carrying grudges, tired of the whole corporate game. "Why come to me?" I asked. "Because everyone who actually knew what they were doing learned it from you. Because the clients who left all said the same thing. Monica was the only reason we stayed. Because you're building something real here." She paused. "And because I owe you an apology. I didn't understand when I got promoted. I thought I'd earned it. It took me 8 months to realize I was just a convenient choice. Someone who wouldn't threaten Jonathan. Someone who'd be grateful enough not to ask questions." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation. Was this some kind of competitive intelligence? A trick to learn about my client list? But all I saw was exhaustion and something I recognized intimately. The desperate need to be valued for your actual work. "Send me your resume," I said finally, "and we'll talk." 10 months to the day after I left Sterling Ashworth, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I was in the middle of a client review, almost let it go to voicemail. Something made me answer. When I picked up, a familiar voice came through. "Monica, it's Richard." Richard Ashworth, the managing partner of Sterling Ashworth. The man who'd signed off on 11 rejections. The man who'd shaken my hand at firm dinners and told me I was the backbone of the organization. The man who'd let Jonathan block my advancement for 8 years. "Hello, Richard. What can I do for you?" "We need to talk," he said, his voice strained, different from the confident executive I remembered. "Things here are challenging. We're struggling. The quarterly numbers are the worst they've been in 7 years. We've lost 11 clients since you left. 11 clients." I did the math in my head. That was nearly 45% of their high net worth base. "The investment team is destabilizing," he continued. "We've had 9 resignations in the last 5 months. The strategies you developed are underperforming. Nobody understands how they work. We're spending more on consultants trying to fix things than we spent on your entire compensation." I waited, saying nothing. Let the silence do its work. "We want you back," he finally said. "We'll match whatever you're earning now, triple it even. Managing director, equity partnership, seat on the investment committee. Whatever you want." I closed my eyes, taking in the moment. This right here was what I'd wanted to hear for so long. Validation. Recognition. The admission that I had been right all along, that they'd made a mistake, that I was worth more than they'd ever been willing to admit. For 8 years, I'd fantasized about this call, about them finally understanding, about them begging me to come back, about me triumphantly accepting on my own terms. But now that it was actually happening, something had shifted. I thought about my office, the brownstone with the exposed brick and the garden view, the quality furniture I'd bought for my team, the culture we'd built, the clients who trusted us. I thought about Stephanie, who'd found her confidence again, about Catherine, who'd finally been given a chance to lead, about the 19 people who'd joined Pinnacle because they believed in what we were building. I thought about all the mornings I'd woken up excited to work, all the portfolios where I'd made the decisions, all the times I'd promoted someone based on merit, not politics, and I realized something important. My revenge fantasy had always ended with them begging me to come back and me triumphantly accepting on my terms, returning as the conquering hero, making them acknowledge everything they'd gotten wrong. But now that it was actually happening, I discovered I didn't want to go back. Not for any amount of money, not for any title, not for any validation they could offer, because I'd built something better, something that was mine, something that valued people for what they actually contributed. "I appreciate the offer," I said, echoing words I'd never thought I'd have the privilege to say. "But I'm not interested." "We're desperate," he admitted, his voice cracking. "Please, just come in for a meeting. Name your terms. Anything." "I'm sorry, Richard," I said. And I was surprised to find I actually meant it. But I've moved on, and you should too. After I hung up, I sat at my desk, my real desk, in my real office, with my company name on the door, Pinnacle Wealth Advisory, and I cried. Not sad tears, not angry ones. Relief, release. The final letting go of 8 years of feeling not quite good enough. Today, Pinnacle Wealth Advisory has 19 employees. We've doubled our assets under management each year for the past 2 years. We're selective about our clients, our strategies, and most importantly, how we treat our people. Let me tell you about my team. Stephanie is now my Director of Client Services. The woman who got the promotion I deserved. The woman whose business cards I used to watch with bitter envy. Turns out, when she is not trapped in a toxic hierarchy, she's actually brilliant. She just needed an environment that valued her actual skills instead of her connections. She came to me nervous and apologetic. She left our first meeting with a job offer. Now she manages relationships with our top 15 families. Her client satisfaction scores are the highest in the firm. She's developed 2 proprietary service frameworks that we've started licensing to other advisors. She told me once that Sterling Ashworth broke something in her, made her believe she'd only succeeded because of politics, made her doubt whether she had any actual talent. Working at Pinnacle helped her find that belief again. That's worth more than any revenue figure. Catherine handles our investment research. She was a junior analyst at a competitor when I met her at a CFA conference. Quiet, overlooked, the kind of person who gets interrupted in meetings. I recognized something in her, the same hunger I'd had, the same frustration of being undervalued. She's been with me for 16 months now. She's developed strategies that have outperformed the market by 400 basis points. She speaks at conferences. She mentors 3 junior analysts. Last month, she told me that Pinnacle was the first place where she felt like her ideas mattered. The first place where someone actually listened. That's what I'm building here. Not just a firm, A place where people like us don't get overlooked. A place where competence counts more than connections. Trevor, the golf buddy who lost $3 million on that trade. He reached out for a job last year. I told him we weren't a good fit. Some patterns don't change. But Allison, the one who couldn't structure options. She showed up at my office 9 months ago, not for a job, to apologize. She'd quit Sterling Ashworth and was starting her own practice. She wanted advice. I gave her 3 hours of my time. For free. Because I remembered what it felt like to have nobody in your corner. Jonathan was let go from Sterling Ashworth last quarter. I heard about it through the grapevine. A former colleague messaged me late one night. Thought you'd want to know. They finally did it. Apparently, the partners lost patience after the 12th client departure. Apparently, his golf connections and family name couldn't save him anymore. Apparently, performance finally mattered. He messaged me on LinkedIn a few days later, a connection request with a note. Monica, hope you're doing well. Would love to catch up sometime. Coffee. I accepted the connection, then blocked him. Petty maybe, but after 8 years and 11 rejections, I'm allowed some pettiness. Richard called again 4 months ago, this time proposing a merger. Sterling Ashworth would become a division of Pinnacle Wealth Advisory. I'd essentially be acquiring my old firm. I declined politely, not because it wasn't tempting. It was. The irony would have been exquisite. Imagine acquiring the firm that rejected you 11 times. Imagine owning the desk where Jonathan sat. Imagine walking into that building as the owner instead of the overlooked associate. Part of me wanted it, the petty part. The part that still remembered every broken promise, every condescending conversation, every time I trained someone who got promoted above me. But a bigger part of me knew better. Sterling Ashworth's problems weren't just about leadership. They were cultural, deep, systemic. The kind of problems that don't disappear just because you change the name on the door. And more importantly, I didn't want to spend my energy fixing something broken. I wanted to keep building something new. So I said no. I think Richard understood. He didn't push. Just said thank you for your time and hung up. I haven't heard from him since. I think about those 11 times a lot. 11 meetings where I was told I wasn't quite ready. 11 moments of devastation that felt like the end of everything. 11 times I walked back to my desk wondering what was wrong with me. But they weren't endings. They were the beginning of everything. If Sterling Ashworth had promoted me on the first try, I'd still be there. Still working 70-hour weeks for someone else's legacy. Still wondering if this was all there was. Still sitting in that worn leather chair. Instead, I have my own firm, my own team, my own vision for what wealth management should look like. We don't do annual reviews where we tell people they're not quite ready. We promote when people are ready, not according to some arbitrary committee schedule. We don't promote based on who golfs with whom. We promote based on results. We don't make promises we don't intend to keep. We keep the promises we make. When someone on my team asks for a development opportunity, we find one. When someone needs flexibility, we figure it out. When someone deserves a promotion, they get it. Simple things, fundamental things. Things that Sterling Ashworth never managed to do. Last month, I promoted 4 people. All 4 had earned it. All 4 got the news in the same meeting where they'd asked for consideration. No committees, no politics, no waiting for Q3 or spring or whenever the timing is optimal. Their faces reminded me of something. The way I used to feel when I still believed hard work would be rewarded. The hope that competence counted. I want to give that feeling to everyone who works for me. The feeling of being valued. The feeling of being seen. Because I remember what it feels like to be invisible. To be told you're not ready when you've been ready for years. To watch people with half your talent get opportunities you've earned. I never want anyone on my team to feel that way. So if you're sitting there right now feeling overlooked, undervalued, or stuck in a place that doesn't recognize what you bring to the table, please hear me. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You don't have to keep auditioning for people who have already decided not to cast you. You don't have to wait for permission from people who will never give it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. And look, I know this story might seem too perfect, too neat, too much like a fairy tale, but I promise you it's real. I have the battle scars and the tax returns to prove it. The path wasn't straight. There were months when I didn't know if I'd make rent. There were clients who didn't pay on time. There were moments when I wondered if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. There was a month, about 5 months in, when I had 0 new prospects, nothing in the pipeline, nothing on the horizon. I sat in my apartment office and calculated how many weeks I had left before I'd have to get a regular job again. The math was brutal. 7 weeks, maybe 8 if I cut back on everything. I thought about calling Jonathan, asking if the offer was still open, swallowing my pride and going back. I even drafted the email once, sat there staring at it for an hour, my finger hovering over the send button. I didn't send it. Instead, I deleted the draft, closed my laptop, went for a walk around the block, came back and started over. I sent 60 cold emails, reached out to every contact I had, attended every networking event I could find, worked every connection until something broke through. It did. Eventually. There was a client who nearly destroyed everything. A family office that promised to sign within 30 days and then went silent for 3 months. I'd already hired someone based on that expected revenue. I had to dig into my personal savings to make payroll. The stress nearly broke me. There were nights I couldn't sleep. Nights I lay awake wondering if I'd ruined my career. Nights when the imposter syndrome screamed so loud I couldn't hear anything else. But I kept going. Because the alternative was going back to a place that had proven 11 times it didn't value what I offered. The alternative was sitting in that worn chair again. The alternative was waiting for a promotion that would never come. So I pushed through. And eventually, things started to work. If you connected with any part of this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below if you've ever had to walk away from something to find your true worth. I read every comment, and your stories help me feel less alone in mine. Thanks for listening to me ramble for so long. Sometimes I still can't believe how different my life is now compared to where I was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was sitting in a worn leather chair, waiting for a promotion that would never come, wondering what was wrong with me. Now I run a firm. I employ 19 people. I have clients who trust me. I have a team that believes in what we're building. The chair in my office is new, quality leather. With proper support, I bought the most comfortable one I could find, not because I needed to, because it reminds me every day of where I started, of what I left behind, of why I'll never go back. Some nights I still dream about Sterling Ashworth, about Jonathan sliding that folder across his desk, about the half sympathy, half condescension, about the words not quite ready yet, but I wake up in my own bed, in my own apartment. Knowing that I don't have to prove myself to people who've already decided not to believe in me, just remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. The 11 rejections didn't define me. They redirected me to a place where I could finally become who I was supposed to be, to a place where merit matters, to a place I built with my own hands. See you in the next video.